I'm Jim Leach, and I'm your host for today's episode of The Cop Shop on YouTube TV channel Tennessee Underground. According to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, as of June 30th of this year, we lost 155 police officers killed in the line of duty. That's a 10% increase from last year, folks. The job became particularly deadly in a 5-day period in July where we lost 4 officers in 5 days. When this happens, we see a little blip on the news, unless it's local to us. And then it seems to be forgotten. Let's look at a few of these situations and see what happened. Kearns County Sheriff's Office in California. Deputy Philip Campus, along with other deputies, was responding to a hostage situation. The call came in, a person was holding an unknown number of people hostage in a house. Deputy Campus, along with special operations officers and others, responded. The bad guy had an assault rifle, one report said an AK-47, and a handgun. Several deputies were wounded. One was treated and released at the hospital later. Philip Campbell was murdered at the scene, killed by the hostage taker. Once officers were able to get inside the house, they found 3 dead hostages. Philip Campbell was a 5-year police veteran, and he also served his country in Afghanistan with the United States Marine Corps. He was a true hero. He leaves a wife and 2 young daughters behind. Those daughters won't ever see their daddy again. That wife will be raising those daughters on her own with all the issues that encompasses. And all he was doing was trying to take care of others. Jeremy Brown was a deputy sheriff in Clark County, Washington. He was working in the narcotics division at the time of his death, and probably because he was in the narcotics division, he was called to help on a surveillance operation, because many times people that work in narcotics have vehicles assigned to them that fit in better, and the narcotics officers themselves, they dress and make their appearance so that they can fit in, blend into the regular people and not look like police officers. Anyway, he was called to help with the surveillance, and it was a surveillance concerning a burglary of a storage unit. Part of what was stolen in this burglary were 32 guns and 20 to 30 rounds of ammunition. It's believed Jeremy was killed with one of those stolen guns. At some point in the surveillance, we're not sure exactly what happened, the 3 defendants began approaching Jeremy's car. Now, I've been in this situation. Surveillance is hard. You're trying to see and hear without being seen or heard. It's tough. It's tough. And I'm thinking in my own mind, having been in these kind of situations before, when Jeremy saw these 3 people coming back to his car, they were burglars, not known to be violent criminals as far as we know. He was probably thinking more about staying, what we call, staying cool, you know what I mean. Not getting burned, we call it, not being made, and not recognizing he was being a police officer conducting surveillance on. He was probably thinking about what story he was going to give them, or he probably had decided that beforehand and was just thinking about communicating with them and tricking him into believing that he wasn't a police officer. They killed him, sitting in his car, sitting in the driver's seat of his car. They murdered him in cold blood. 2 brothers and one of the brothers' wife were arrested. The one who is believed to be the shooter is being held with no bond. Jeremy Brown was 46 years old and a 15-year police veteran, which means that he started when he was about 21 years old. He had dedicated his entire life to law enforcement. to serving others. And his reward is to be murdered sitting in the front seat of his car by a bunch of burglars. After his death, they promoted him from detective to sergeant as a show of respect to him. Jeremy left a wife and 5 adult children, and if you say, well, at least the children are grown up, and that's true, that's better, but still, I lost my father when I was grown, and I missed him terribly, would love to talk to him today, and I'd say these children feel the same way about their father. Down to Selma, Alabama. Selma Police Department, police officer Marquise Moore was working the midnight shift. About 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, he decided to take his lunch break, and he went to his apartment, and at his apartment was a lady who has been identified as his significant other. They sat down to have a meal, like I say, 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and some coward in a sniper-style attack shot through the apartment, killing Officer Moore and wounding his significant other. He was 25 years old, been on the police department for 4 years. Once again, started early in life, 21 years old. He dedicated himself to this work. His life was snuffed out far too early. The lady, we'll never know how well she'll recover. We don't know now anyway, how well she'll be able to recover, how the rest of her life will be. Hopefully, physically she'll be okay and she can overcome the emotional trauma of losing someone she loved. And you know, I'm going to tell you, that's a fear that every officer has, that at some point you're going to be taken down by someone that you don't see, you don't hear, you don't even know they're there, and all of a sudden your life is gone. And for those of you who may live with or be around officers or former officers, please forgive us for being paranoid sometimes, because we know how fast things can happen and how tragic the consequences are. You know, are we paranoid? You bet we are. The last case we were going to talk about that happened in this 5-day period, a young man named Ryan Balke. He worked for the tribal police at the Red Lake Nation in North Dakota. They received a call that said a person was acting suicidal. That's the phrase that I read. 5 officers responded to this call. When they arrived, the man was standing on his front porch. Doesn't say that he had a gun, so I'm assuming he didn't. They would have probably mentioned it, I think, if he did. They tried to get him to come off the front porch and come down and meet them. He refused to do that and went back inside the home. The articles that I reviewed weren't really clear, but we don't know if there was somebody else in the house. We don't know if the officers knew he had weapons inside the house or not. But we know we had a man who was threatening suicide or had said something to make folks believe that he was thinking about killing himself. And sometimes, folks, a person killing themselves are not far away from killing somebody else. So the officers may not have known, and there's no way they could have known for sure, no matter what the call said, whether there were other people in the house or not. After a reasonable amount of time, and they couldn't talk the man out of the house, Officer Balke, at obviously risk to his own life, decided to go in the house and try to secure it, to keep this gentleman from hurting himself or maybe hurting other people if they were inside. Balke never made it past the front door. He was gunned down by the man who'd been threatening suicide. At some point, the man snuck out of the house, probably had a back door or something. There's a lot of confusion when something like this happens, obviously. He got out somewhere or another, went to a house a couple of doors down, and surrendered to a neighbor, gave them a gun. And he said he was sorry that he had killed the officer. He said, I thought I had a warrant out and on me, and I didn't want to go back to jail. I'm sorry I killed him. And that's, you know, that's very tragic. It shows the entire tragedy of this situation. But even though he may be sorry, Officer Belk is dead. He left a wife and 4 children to live the rest of their life without him. You know, what were these folks doing when they got killed? They were doing exactly what we hired them to do and what we have asked them to do, what we tasked them with doing. They were there to serve and protect us. Each and every one of these situations, that's what these officers are trying to do, with the exception of Officer Moore, who was tragically murdered. And we know no motive. No motive had been discovered. The guy that shot and killed him and killed his friend and wounded his friend, I'm sorry. That happened in Selma, Alabama. The shooter was arrested sometime later in Tuscaloosa, which is some ways away. 18-year-old kid, college athlete. No motive is known at this time. Think about these things, folks. Police business is getting more and more dangerous. Ambush killings are happening more than I've ever seen them in my life. We need our police. They give us order and solidarity in our society. The next time you see one, please tell them you appreciate them. They will appreciate that very much. I'm Jim Leach, and until next time, please be aware of your surroundings and be safe, folks.